Talk to me about exhibits. I want to make sure we have everything we need for trial, and I'm also feeling like we've got too much material. How can I best tackle the exhibit problem?
I'm smiling a little bit because in the last trial that we had, it was document intensive, and we ended up, I think, with 40 trial exhibit binders for our exhibits alone. And the defense had, I think, an equivalent number. In order to be set up in the courtroom, we were going to need bookshelves in order to have all of the binders accessible. And here's the challenge with this. We want to be ready for trial and make sure that we can put on anything that we need to cross-examine an expert or a witness. And sometimes it is hard to tell which of the multitude of documents out there are the important ones. So in an effort to be ultimately prepared, we sometimes are over-inclusive. So I think the best way to deal with this is unfortunately the hardest. And that is to roughly 6 months before trial, really sit down and focus on the case to determine what are the key documents, what do you really need in order to be able to try the case. With injury cases, the medical records become the bulk of the exhibits. And one might consider whether each physical therapy visit, each appointment is absolutely essential, or whether some of those can be culled to remove things. The downside risk of this is sometimes it's one of those physical therapy visits where a client says something that is different that the defense hammers on, and if you don't have it in your exhibits, then it becomes a problem. So I would say on the medical records, while it might be nice to slim them down, typically just putting them in chronological order, having each one be a separate exhibit number, and having that be a set within the exhibits, that's unfortunately somewhat essential. Culling down the liability exhibits to the ones that are truly going to make a difference, that can really slim the exhibits down a bit. And while you might run the risk of not having something in the courtroom, most trial judges have some flexibility where if you realize in the midst of trial, we failed to include this exhibit, and we think it's going to be important for this witness, the trial judge will usually give you some flexibility for that. The other pieces that I think are important to make sure that one includes in exhibits and thinks about well in advance are the types of things that are going to be helpful damage exhibits. And these are, say, if you're representing somebody who's been injured, photos of what the person used to do before the incident, photos that other cameo witnesses, people who can talk about the impact of this injury on that person's life, if they have photos or cards or trophies or other mementos that are helpful to be able to tell the story of how this person is different, making sure that those get included in the exhibit list up front. And the final piece that we oftentimes use, a lot of people understand the world geographically. And so if you're going to be doing your opening statement, a thing that can be very helpful if the incident happened in a location that's not immediately understood by all, and that's most incidents, you want to make sure that there are some maps or Google Images or intersection photos, because it's one thing to describe a location and it's another thing to show a location. And if you're going to show it, even as a demonstrative, you need to be able to identify it for the clerk and for the court. So that's exhibits. Hopefully this has been helpful for folks, and particularly if you're getting ready for trial. If there are questions that you have on this or other areas, we'd be happy to address them. Hit us at podcast@coopers.law with any questions, comments, feedback you might have for the show. If you found this helpful, we would love your 5-star review, and we'd love for you to share this with anyone who you think might find it beneficial, particularly folks who are getting ready for trial. So to all of you doing justice out there, happy hunting.